If you're an OG subscriber to the channel, you might be familiar with the NHL Overpaid or Underpaid series. Basically, it's a series where I ask you guys to name a player and their contract, and I make a video talking about if I think those players are overpaid or underpaid. Today we're going to be doing something similar but a little bit different. Instead of taking your guys' suggestions, we're just going to be going through some of the more notable contract extensions that have been given out over the past couple of weeks, because there's been a lot of them, and I'll be giving you guys my opinion on if I think the players that we talk about in this video that recently signed extensions are overpaid or underpaid, and just my overall thoughts on the deals. Before we get started, I do quickly want to plug my second channel. The link to it is always down below at the top of the description. I'll leave it in the pinned comment of this video as well. I've been posting a lot over there since the regular season began. What you'll find on that channel are shorter videos where we talk about games or just moments from games, including a post-game video after every Red Wings game this season. So if you're interested in that, be sure to go and subscribe to the second channel. And with that all being said, let's go ahead and start off with Dawson Mercer, who a few weeks back signed a 3-year extension with the New Jersey Devils for $12 million total, an annual cap hit of $4 million. Really solid bridge deal here for the Devils, in my opinion. Dawson Mercer's offensive production did take a bit of a step back last season, as he finished with just 20 goals and 33 points in 82 games compared to the season prior where he had 27 goals and 56 points. But still, two 20-plus goal seasons at the age of just 22 is nothing to scoff at, and most of those goals over the last few seasons have came at even strength. Dawson Mercer isn't somebody that's featured on the New Jersey Devils top power play unit, so he's been a pretty efficient goal scorer at even strength for New Jersey. Even if Dawson Mercer isn't able to take another step, and this is just what he is, a 20 to 25 goal scorer, I think $4 million for that type of player is still really good value, so I'm going to go underpaid here for Dawson Mercer. Moving on now to another player who signed an extension a few weeks back, and that is Dylan Guenther of the Utah Hockey Club. His deal came in at 8 years, worth a little over $57 million total, a cap hit of around $7.1 mil per season. Now this obviously is one of those deals where the team isn't paying the player for what they've done up until that point. They're paying the player for what they expect he's going to do in the future and the player he's going to develop into. Now even before this season began, people were calling this extension a steal for Utah, as last season in 45 games with the then Arizona Coyotes, Dylan Guenther proved that he can score at the NHL level and has an above average NHL release. In 45 games, he finished with 18 goals and 17 assists for 35 points. That is over a 30 goal pace across a full 82 game season. And so far this season, albeit a very small sample size, just 2 games, Dylan Guenther has started white hot. He's already up to 4 goals. That lethal release has been on full display. This is a guy who has all the makings of a future 40 goal scorer. If he stays healthy this season, he very well may score 40 this year. And the thing about this extension is it doesn't even kick in until next season. This season, Dylan Guenther is still on his entry-level deal, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say by the time this contract kicks in at the start of next season, it's going to look like a big underpay. Moving along now, we have another bridge deal here, as Cole Perfetti signed a 2-year extension with the Winnipeg Jets for $6.5 mil total, an annual cap hit of $3.25 million. Over the next 2 seasons, the Jets should get pretty solid value here with this contract, which is usually the case with bridge deals. The AAV is never really that high. Last season, despite only getting bottom 6 minutes and actually serving as a healthy scratch quite a bit towards the end of the season and in the playoffs, Cole Perfetti was still able to finish with 19 goals and 38 points in 71 games. He's obviously got a ton of skill as he continues to round out his game and earn more trust from the Winnipeg Jets coaching staff and find himself in a bigger role. I think Cole Perfetti is the kind of player that at the very least should be able to get you 60-70 points in a season, and I think it's a pretty safe bet to assume he will take that next step at some point over the next 2 years throughout the duration of this contract. But even if he doesn't, and he's only able to produce at a similar rate to what he did last season, $3.25 mil for that kind of production is still not bad at all. Moving on now to a more recent extension, and the first of a few goaltenders that we're going to talk about in this video, Joey Daccord, who signed a 5-year, $25 million extension with the Seattle Kraken, an annual cap hit of $5 million. I'll be honest, this one is a little bit of a head scratcher for me. Now yes, last season he came out of nowhere, ended up playing 50 games, and in those 50 games, his numbers were very good. But that's just one season, and it's not like Joey Daccord is a young, up-and-coming goaltender. He's 28 years old, and prior to last season, he only played a combined total of 19 games throughout his entire career. The Seattle Kraken are making a huge bet here on the fact that Joey Daccord is going to be able to replicate his success from last season, and if he does, then $5 million a season for that type of goaltender is going to look fantastic. If he doesn't though, then this could quickly turn into a disaster for the Seattle Kraken, as when this extension kicks in next season, Seattle will have the 4th highest paid goaltending tandem in the entire NHL between Joey Daccord and Philip Grubauer. We all know how the Philip Grubauer contract turned out for Seattle. Fingers crossed for their sake that history doesn't repeat itself here with the Daccord extension. What I really don't get about this is what the rush was for Seattle to sign him to a 5-year extension. He still signed through this season at a cap hit of $1.2 million. I feel like it would have been maybe a little bit smarter and safer for Seattle to play out this season and see if Joey Daccord is able to replicate what he did last season or if he was just a 1-year wonder, and then talk extension at the end of the season when you have a much bigger sample size. Of course, then if Joey Daccord had another fantastic season, they probably would have had to pay him a lot more than $5 million a year. I feel like the big extensions that have been given out recently to goaltenders like Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman, and the talk of Igor Shesterkin potentially signing a historic extension with the Rangers soon, may have caused Seattle to rush into this and make them want to get this done as soon as possible, because it does seem like the market for goaltenders is changing and goalies are starting to make a lot more money. So maybe Seattle wanted to get ahead of the curve here, but even still, I think this is a very risky extension for a guy who's only had one full NHL season up until this point, and also a guy that Seattle didn't even go with as their opening night starter this year. They decided to go with Philip Grubauer in their first game. Speaking of those other goaltenders like Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman, first we'll talk about Swayman, who signed an 8-year, $66 million extension with the Boston Bruins, a cap hit of $8.25 million per season. When it comes to this extension, I think the Bruins should just be happy with the fact that they were able to get something done before the regular season began. $8.25 million per season is a lot, but Jeremy Swayman is only 25 years old, and he's played 133 NHL games up until this point, and throughout those games, for the most part, he has consistently been very good. Now, throughout his career, he has had the luxury of playing with another elite goaltender in Linus Ullmark, so neither one of those guys in Boston really had the pressure of having to be the number one guy and start, 60 plus games a season, and that's not the case anymore, as Jeremy Swayman is now sharing the net with Jonas Korpisalo, who had a bit of a rough outing in his first game with the Boston Bruins, is coming off of a bad year with Ottawa, and obviously isn't anywhere near the kind of goaltender Ullmark is at this point. So this is definitely going to be a big season for Jeremy Swayman, because he does have that pressure on him now, being the clear-cut number one in net for the Boston Bruins, and also the added pressure of wanting to live up to such a massive contract extension. Based off of what Swayman has done up until this point in his career, I would say $8.25 million is fair. I'm not going to say underpaid or overpaid. I would say it's fair, and maybe we can circle back on this at the end of the season when Jeremy Swayman has a full season under his belt, not playing with Linus Ullmark. Moving on now to the Linus Ullmark extension, he re-upped in Ottawa on a 4-year deal worth $33 million total, a cap hit identical to Jeremy Swayman's $8.25 million per season. I'm a big fan of this contract for the Ottawa Senators. I think 4 years is perfect for a guy who's 31 years old, and he'll be 32 next season when this contract extension kicks in. At that age, you probably don't want to be dishing out a 6, 7, 8-year deal, especially with this high of a cap hit, so I think the 4-year term is perfect. Linus Ullmark has been one of the best goaltenders in the league for a few years now. He won the Vezina Trophy back in 2023. Now, yes, you can say the same thing about Ullmark as we said about Jeremy Swayman. Ullmark has had the luxury of sharing the net with another elite goaltender in Boston over these last few years, and I know a lot of people also like to point out the fact that over these last few years, he had been playing behind a very strong Boston Bruins defense, so now going to a team like Ottawa, we should expect a big regression in terms of Ullmark's performance and his numbers, but I don't really buy that, because before going to Boston, Linus Ullmark had some very good seasons on some very bad Buffalo Sabres teams that are way worse than this current iteration of the Ottawa Senators. I don't think Ottawa is a bad team at all. Sure, their defense has been spotty over the last few seasons, but I think they're starting to put it all together. I actually predicted them to make the playoffs this season, and so far so good, as Linus Ullmark in his first start of the year as a member of the Senators was fantastic, and they picked up the win against the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. And speaking of the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, they were able to extend Carter Verhaeghe to an 8-year deal worth $56 million, a cap hit of $7 million per season. So the Florida Panthers are able to get another one of their core forwards locked up long term. This is one of those contracts that may not age the best. It's an 8-year deal. Verhaeghe's already 29, so he's going to be 37 when this deal expires. But for right now, I think $7 million is a very fair number for Carter Verhaeghe, who has turned himself into one of the more lethal goal scorers in the NHL. Over the last 2 seasons, only 14 players in the league have more goals than Carter Verhaeghe. He's absolutely lethal off the rush, a great weapon on the power play, has been a fantastic playoff performer for the Florida Panthers as well, and overall has just turned himself into a really dynamic offensive winger, which is pretty cool to see for a guy who was drafted all the way back in 2013 and spent countless years in the American Hockey League and in the East Coast Hockey League. Now, over 10 years later, after being drafted, he signs this massive extension. So those are all of the official extensions that are done deals that I wanted to talk about in this video. I do want to close by talking about an extension that is reportedly in the works. Yesterday, Frank Seravalli reported that the New York Rangers and Alexis Lafreniere are engaged in extension talks with discussions revolving around an 8-year deal at $8 million plus per year. Now, obviously, this isn't a done deal, but I do think $8 million per season is a little bit rich for Lafreniere. I know he's coming off of a breakthrough season where he scored 28 goals and put up 57 points in 82 games, and he looks poised to take another step this season, as in the Rangers' first game of the year, he had a goal and an assist, looked very good in that game. For the sake of this comparison, let's just say Lafreniere signs for 8 years, $8 million per season. Just comparing that deal to a couple of other players' extensions who were drafted just a few picks after Lafreniere in the 2020 draft, Lucas Raymond and Tim Stützle. Lucas Raymond's contract carries a cap hit of a little under $8.1 million per season, and Tim Stützle's contract has a cap hit of $8.35 million per season. Both of those guys, at least up until this point, have proven to be much more dynamic at the NHL level so far than Lafreniere, Tim Stützle especially. Now, players develop at different speeds. Lafreniere's career obviously got off to a slow start, but he has consistently improved year after year, and like I said, finally broke through and became a really effective top 6 forward last season. The Rangers, obviously, if they're talking about an extension of this magnitude, are banking on him taking a massive step forward and being a game-breaking forward for them, like Tim Stützle is with Ottawa. Really interested to hear your guys' thoughts on the potential Lafreniere extension in New York, though, especially if you're a Rangers fan. How would you feel if he ended up signing an 8-year deal worth a cap hit of $8 million plus per season? So that is going to do it for today's video. As always, I want to know what you guys are thinking, not only about a potential Lafreniere extension, but about all the extensions that we talked about in this video. If you made it all this way to the end and you ended up enjoying yourself, please remember to leave a like. It's the best way to let me know that you enjoyed, and it does actually help out the videos a ton. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year round, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you all again soon.